Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, and thank you for attending the Riverhead Planning Board session. If everyone can stand, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Today is Thursday, January 20th, 2022. First thing that I would like everyone to be aware of is that beginning in February, our first Thursday of the month meetings will be held at 6 p.m. rather than 7 p.m., so an hour earlier. So just take note of that, please. So the first thing we have today is a public hearing, 1792 Middle Road, Breezy Hill Group.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jeff Murphy for the record. We did receive correspondence from the applicant's representative from Nelson Pope and Voorhees dated January 18th. It's a very extensive document. We are going to be posting that on our website so it's made available to the public. Jesse Seaman will be reviewing it. Our recommendation today is to, and you have a resolution before you later on, is to close the public hearing with leaving a 10-day written comment period.
Thank you. Do we have anyone that would like to?
The applicant's representative, Jacob Voorhees, is in attendance. If you have any questions of him.
I'd like to ask Jeff a question. I'd like to ask you a question, Jeff. I suppose the document that you received is going to cover all the points, I hope, that we've discussed at the last few meetings?
We hope so, yes.
Okay. So then why are we closing the hearing if we still haven't heard, we haven't got all the information that we wanted to have?
I think at this point, given the length of the time that this application has proceeded, there comes a time when we could be here for a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now. So push comes to shove, you really need to end the secret review process at this stage, which is only the draft EIS, not the final. Any remaining questions can be answered through the final environmental impact statement process, and that's what our recommendation is. If after review of this document, if there's any remaining questions, it can be answered through the FEIS.
How is that going to take place? How are you going to be communicating with us about this?
When
I'd
we
like
get-
to know what's in the document.
Correct.
I'd like to hear what's in the document.
You're going to be reviewing it. Jess Seaman will review it, prepare a report. An FEIS will be prepared, and it will respond to all of the questions that were raised during the whole public hearing process, the responses by the applicant, and then that will be included as a response to comments in the FEIS.
Jeff, is it going to be on the town website?
Yes, absolutely.
Jeff, do you want to give us any?
Jeff Seaman, for the record, consulting on this application on behalf of the planning board. I don't have any additional comments at this time, and I'm agreeable to closing the hearing and moving forward with a final EIS, and after the completion of the FEIS, you'll be in a position to prepare a finding statement.
Jeff, how do we complete an FEI? How do they complete an FEIS if they still we haven't got all the information, and we're not sure we have all the information from our previous hearings?
Well,
They just don't see how the two connect.
Well, I think the connection is if the information is not available or it's incomplete, that is part of the secret review process, that it's not available or it's not answerable. You could continue to keep hearings open, as Mr. Murphy has stated, indefinitely, but the goal of the secret process is to bring it to a closure at some point. I believe that these hearings have been kept open primarily at the request of the applicant. and the board in order to receive that information. It's not from the public participation or the public's expectation that they, or even members of involved agencies, wanted to continue the hearing process to keep open and gather additional information.
Okay, but if we're closing on the draft, then they're going to submit a final. So it's a whole new document, is that correct?
No, the final is really going to respond to the substantive comments provided by both the public as well as the comments that we have received by the applicant. As I think I've stated before, I regard those as both a response to questions and comments on the draft environmental impact statement. They're part of the record, but they are not a final EIS. They're just part of the comment process. And I think what we're trying to do is now consolidate that information and sift through it and prepare the final EIS.
So in short, if everything isn't answered, they don't get the final, correct?
Well, a final EIS would make that clarification.
Right,
If
exactly.
there were issues that have not been addressed, if there are issues that have been raised and due to both schedule or lack of information, those are, remember, these are impact statements. And so if that information is not available, that just goes into the FEIS, but that information is weighed when you're preparing a finding statement.
So in essence, this latest document that you've received would probably be a major part of the FEIS.
Yeah, well, it will, in my view, and it's just my opinion, it's included and weighed no more or less significant than any other substantive comments. If you ask a question of an applicant and they provide you an answer that responds specifically to that question, and it's clear, then, you have a comment and you have an answer. If the response is not clear or not given at all, whatever, then that also goes into the final EIS. But at some point, you'll need a document that you can make a decision on. And I've only received the letter recently. It's 13 pages, but with a substantial amount of backup information to it, primarily traffic information. But it's up to this board to decide how long you want to continue to ask for information, and whether or not that information is significant enough to be included in the FEIS.
Well, I noticed in the resolution that's before us that this application started in 2018. It died, was reborn, there was an initial DEIS submitted.
No,
and
what
it
had
was drawn
happened?
back, and then they started all over again?
No, well, there were a few steps involved. I think when the application came in, it needed an interpretation from the Zoning Board of Appeals, which they did receive. There was, I think, a gap between the positive deck, which required an EIS, and the draft scope. And when the draft scope was submitted by the applicant, the lead agency, the planning board, doesn't have any control as to how much time
Right.
there is to do a draft scope, and you can't write the draft scope. That comes from the applicant. Once that was submitted, our timeline began, and we
Right.
responded, did the final, did the hearing. They did an EIS, which we found incomplete back in December of 2020. I think it was in January, and then they revised that and resubmitted in August. So there's really only been the one DEIS. As to the length of the process, we can't always control that
Oh, I know that.
because of that. But we have had a number of hearings and a number of questions and a number of
Oh, I
responses.
understand, yeah. Okay, thanks.
anyone on Zoom?
There are two. Do we know if they want to speak or?
Yeah, nobody's requested to speak.
I'm gonna read it. Make a motion, resolution number 5, Riverhead Planning Board closes the public hearing on a draft environmental impact statement for the site plan application of Breezy Hill asphalt and concrete crushing and screening facility and orders preparation of a final environmental impact statement at 1992 Middle Road in Calverton. So moved.
Second?
Motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye, opposed.
The motion
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Now we have some discussion items. If we could have Greg Bergman come up right now for Riverhead PGC LLC, Riverhead Plaza Restaurant Depot conversion.
All right, thank you. We do have Charles Cuddy here, is the attorney representing the application. I believe he may have some members from the design team. If the board has any questions for them. Greg Bergman, for the record, Riverhead Planning Department. We have received a site plan application. Yeah, you guys need another chair.
Just like to remind everybody, if you keep your keyboards off the microphones, please.
All right, so we've received a site plan application proposing to perform improvements at an existing commercial site to allow for the reuse of approximately 65,000 square feet of existing vacant retail space within the shopping center to allow for new tenant occupancy. Proposed improvements consist of facade repainting and signage improvements, removal of an existing outdoor sales area behind the building, construction of exterior loading docks and trash compactor area, the installation of new retaining walls, installation of sound walls ranging in height from 8 feet to 16 feet, installation of new electrical infrastructure, as well as milling, repaving, and restriping of existing asphalt. The project site's located at 765 Old Country Road, shopping center known as Riverhead Plaza. The property is located within the shopping center zoning use district, and it comprises a total of seven separate tax map numbers. Regarding SECRA, under our town code, section 225, it is considered a type 1 action because it involves parking facilities with 50 or more spaces. Staff recommends that the planning board circulate a request for lead agency for SECRA review. Potential noise impacts from the construction and the reuse of the property have been addressed by the applicant in their application. They did submit a noise study, which I will detail further on this presentation. In the absence of any objections to the board's lead agency request, staff recommends the board issue a negative declaration, as the sound study and the information provided has demonstrated that the potential noise impacts will be effectively mitigated on the site. There's a couple of notes on the site plans right now that indicate there's a number of variances needed for pre-existing non-conforming conditions. I did go over the application with Jeff. He's in agreement. They are not proposing to increase any of the degree of nonconformity, so they don't need to go to the zoning board for existing conditions. So they'll just make one minor note. They'll remove the, to indicate the need for variances. Regarding the noise study, the applicant submitted a noise study prepared by VHB Engineering, dated December 6, 2021. That noise study assessed the anticipated noise levels from the daily routine operations of the site, as well as the operation of proposed mechanical equipment. This is all based on worst-case scenario modeling where all of the machinery was going to be operating at once. That consisted of the 5 rooftop mechanical units, emergency backup generator, 2 refrigeration condenser units, the trash compactor, and various loading dock activities. The report did propose 2 different mitigation scenarios. Common factors for both mitigation scenarios consisted of a 10-foot tall plywall noise barrier along the southern side of the loading dock, an 8-foot tall chain link fence with acoustic blankets around the emergency generator, 16-foot tall plywall noise barrier around the ground level refrigeration units, and a 12-foot tall chain link fence with acoustic blankets as gate access to those refrigeration units.
Nothing proposed on the fence between the, I think it's Kings Drive residence and the building?
No, there's nothing proposed right now along that property line, on the southern property line with Kings Drive. The only mitigation is a sound wall on the southern side of that loading dock.
But you know what happens, you tractor trailers go in the back behind the building and sit there and idle all night, and neighbors are trying to sleep.
So that actually brings me a little bit further. I do note the noise study that the applicant prepared was based on the applicant's representation that all the delivery and loading dock activities are going to be taking place during the day. That is important to note because some of the thresholds that were evaluated in that noise study demonstrated that if the activities at the loading dock were taking place at night, it actually would result in violating the noise ordinance of the town. So the daytime operations of this site is really critically important to the noise impacts. I did recommend that, if the board approves the application, that those conditions be included as covenants. I don't know if it's going to be overly restrictive if they do have deliveries that have to take place at night. The board could consider that. I don't know if they would consider sound walls along that southern, like you said, the property line along Kings Drive.
Greg, are these loading docks existing, or are they going to?
No, they're proposed. Right now, on the back side of the building, on page 7 of the staff report, that was the existing outdoor sales area. I guess it was like the garden center for the old Walmart building.
Right.
So that existing sales area is going to be removed, and they're going to be constructing the loading docks.
Where exactly is the traffic going to be coming from, coming into the shopping center?
So the tractor trailers will enter the site near the western property boundary. There's a curb cut right up nearby the, I believe it's a nail salon. So they'd come into the site through that existing curb cut. They would traverse along the western property line, south around the building, come in, load. It's really the southeast corner of where the loading docks are. They would continue out along the eastern property line and exit onto the Old Country Road at that signalized intersection.
Does that presently exist now?
That traffic, yeah, all those roadways, all that location for the traffic circulation exists right now. I do note in the report, they did submit the vehicular circulation plan. It's sheet C203 of the site plan. If you look, when the trucks are going to exit to Old Country Road, tractor trailers that are going to be navigating that turn are basically going to be traveling completely in the other, in the oncoming lane of traffic. So I did recommend, the applicant explore options to redesign that intersection right there, that 4-way intersection, to allow for tractor trailers to
There's a
exit.
traffic light there now, right?
There is a traffic light at Old Country Road, but I'm talking about at the internal, there's a 4-way intersection where the main driveway comes in from Old Country Road, and there's an east-west traffic circulation in sight. And if you look on that sheet C203, you can see the circulation pattern for a 53-foot tractor trailer shows that it's really coming into the oncoming traffic lane.
I realized that when Walmart was there, that there was traffic coming through, so I know that the residents surrounding were used to knowing that that was going to be happening. How much more traffic will they be bringing in as opposed to how much
I
Walmart
would
was?
defer to the applicant for that information.
How are you?
There, Andrew Kelly is next to me. He is the engineer planner from VHB. And to my far left is William Bugelman, who's the director and of development and construction for Phillips International, which operates that site. So I think they can respond to some of your concerns.
Thank you.
Regarding we did call out the number of trips in our town study. I was just trying to find it. The hours of delivery were, was it 7? I have to find it in our report. I apologize. I didn't have that written down. But we do speak to the number of truck deliveries during the daytime hours and the time in the report. I just have to pull it out and find it for you.
Okay.
But it is identified in there.
Okay.
Well, if I can add also that we did relay to our tenant, Restaurant Depot, the principles of it, of the town ordinance and the restrictions in terms of when they can take deliveries and receive deliveries. They acknowledged it, they're on board, they're all,
Yeah, that's in a perfect world, but some truck coming from wherever,
I understand.
he's tied in traffic, he gets there late, he's gonna go sleep, in the truck till the shop opens or whatever. We're definitely gonna have to, have signage along the back about no truck idling in the
No
back.
truck, we have that at a lot of our shopping centers. We'll post them up and we'll make sure, and that we'll work with our tenant to make sure that they comply with that.
When the previous Kmart was there prior to this, right?
Walmart.
Walmart, where did they get their deliveries?
There's an existing two-bay loading dock on the west side rear of the property.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, what's the proposed amount of,
I'm sorry?
what's the proposed amount of
West side,
Loading docks?
the loading docks?
5.
5 in addition to the pre-existing?
Well, the pre-existing is all the way on the other side. This building is about 112,000 square feet. So the existing loading docks are all the way on the west side. And the
West side of the
tenant,
property?
the west side of the building.
The building?
Of the building. And then Restaurant Depot was taking the east 65,000 square foot portion of it and creating its own loading dock and its own, its own sensibility.
That's on the east side.
That's on the east side of the Walmart building.
Where the old garden center was.
Right, we're proposing to demolish the garden center and then construct a loading dock
Right.
area.
I think we should consider some sound barrier between the residents on Kings Drive and possibly even Oliver Street. We've seen this at ShopRite, signs all over the place, no idling. What do? They idle. And these people are living there kind of in peace and quiet. Now, this is gonna come, which I'm happy it's coming, by the way.
Glad
I
to
just
hear
think
that.
we better take a hard look at
Right.
the noise abatement where the truck depot's gonna be.
So just to note, that sound wall that we are proposing by the new loading dock will extend from the corner of the building out to encompass that entire loading dock area.
Yep, I see that. I
Yeah.
think you've done a good job there. I'm just worried about trucks in and out constantly.
Coming in.
I'm sure this is gonna be a very busy place. Every restaurant in North and South Fork is probably gonna go there.
We hope so.
Yeah, I do too. But I am concerned about the neighbors in the backyard, and I think as planners, we should take a look at that.
Okay, there is I'm sure you can see from the plan, there is a buffer with that recharge basin over there
Yep,
that shields a bunch of the residences behind in that quadrant of the southeast corner.
Does anybody have any other questions? Is there anyone on Zoom that?
I do just want to go on, there's a couple of more things we need to touch on. The exterior lighting on the site, right now the site plan does not include a lighting plan. When I went out to the site, I noted, as you can see on page 5 of the report, basically all of the site's existing pole-mounted lighting fixtures, while the height of them is not indicated on the plan, they do seem to well exceed the maximum 16-foot mounting height. It was unclear if they were dark sky compliant. There's a couple of non-compliant wall packs. So the town's lighting code, Article XLIX, It indicated that all pre-existing non-conforming commercial and industrial parking lot lighting illuminating 20 or more parking spaces shall be in full conformance with the provisions of this article no later than December 31st, 2017. From the adoption of that code, I believe it was, I believe it was adopted around 2008. It gave commercial property owners the option to kind of do it in increments up until that point, with full compliance being reached by 2017. Being that that has now, sunset, I mean, it's been about 4 years. I don't see that there's any way that we don't have the applicant address the current on-site lighting. So they do need to provide a lighting plan and demonstrate compliance with Article XLIX. And then it's kind of twofold with the lighting and screening and buffer regulations. Town code does require non-residential buildings in excess of 10,000 square feet to provide landscaped islands at a rate of 20 square feet per parking space. So now, just based on that code, the number of parking stalls in the site, they should be providing approximately 7,400 square feet of landscaped islands within that parking area. Now, it's kind of, they can, I don't want to say kill two birds with one stone, but if they're going to have to reduce the height of the lighting poles, they may need to add additional lighting poles to provide adequate lighting in that parking lot. So that might be an opportunity to lower the heights of the lighting poles, provide some landscaped islands, put those new poles in there, and effectively address two issues. Reduce the overall nonconformity of the site, create a more, beautiful landscape site, and really kind of just effectively address those two issues. So that's something the applicant needs to address. We already touched on the traffic circulation. A couple of minor things on the back end. They really should just provide screening for those dumpsters on the back of the building. And construction phasing. The construction phasing plan does indicate that they will effectively block off the eastern portion of the site, which appears as though it will limit access from the signalized intersection and from Oliver Street. I just had one question, would that impact the Gala Fresh when they're taking deliveries? If the trucks are unable to utilize the full circulation of the site, if trucks enter on that west to make deliveries at Gala Fresh, will they still be able to exit the
So
site?
I can address that comment quickly. We're proposing to mill and overlay the northern half of the site north of our proposed tenant space. So we'll provide sediment protection for those drainage inlets. There's a drafting error on the erosion control plan that will eliminate the silt fence showing that being blocked off. We will provide obviously adequate erosion control protection for the loading dock activities as well.
All right, so it won't be reset, just because it's shown it.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah,
so,
construction after
correct,
itself.
so that'll be taken out, and we'll provide it down the southern side to protect the existing DRA. But through this area, we'll continue to show just the sediment trap protection on the inlets for the mill and overlay process.
All right.
Greg, is there a need to look at the drainage on the site, the parking lot itself? I realize it was built a number of years ago, and we may have changed some of our requirements. It should be looked at.
I did refer the plans to the town engineer. They are proposing drainage improvements to handle the loading bay, the changes in the loading bay. They are proposing drainage there. Aside from that, I'm not sure. I'll wait for comments from the town engineer if they need to look at it. I don't know that there's any kind of flooding issues during stormwater events, so I don't really think there would be a need to kind of redesign the entire drainage system. If anything, if we can get the landscaped islands, they'd actually reduce the amount of impervious coverage, so really that could only help to reduce the need for additional drainage.
Well, that's why I kept thinking of the drainage when you started to say the code has been changed to require those islands.
Yeah.
If I could just address a couple of those questions that the planner raised. So in terms of the drainage, I think around 10 years ago, we added a whole series of catch basins in the back of the center to increase the capacity. This was by an engineering company that we retained. We filed plans, we got a permit, we closed out the project. So you'll see that we did address all along the back
So
southern
this was
portion.
done through the town building department?
Absolutely. With the engineer, we had an engineer, they came out, they inspected, we had a local contract that did the work. There was a whole bunch of dry wells. It was an expensive proposition. We did the same thing when it used to be King Cullen, which is now Gallo Fresh. So we addressed the drainage issues a while ago. I just wanted to.
And that was in 2010, you said?
I don't remember when, and we do have the plans, and we sent them out. It could have been about 2010. There should be a record of it with the town.
Could you get that to
Yeah,
Craig?
I'll look through the records and see what we've got.
Or get it to him?
Absolutely.
Might be easier, to try to find
You
it.
have them. You can
Yep.
forward them
Yeah,
over.
we have copies of
Yeah.
this.
Perfect, thank you.
Where will your customers that are loading their trucks, where will they do that?
Loading, I'm sorry.
Usually, your customers have trucks, even though they may be smaller, they're not tractor trailers, but they're smaller vehicles. You normally have that near your entrance and exit. I've been to several of
Sure.
your places, so I know they look pretty much the same. So where are they going to load
In the
from their
front
car?
of, in the front of the building.
In the front of the building?
Parking lot. Yeah, they're not gonna, as far as I know, and I'm not Restaurant Depot. Restaurant Depot is our tenant, and the way that we understand it is the shoppers are gonna come in through the front and leave through the front. It's not like a Home Depot or Lowe's where there's a side where they can, bring material.
That is true, but my question is, how many parking spots for these vehicles? Because they're normally, in addition to some of the, what I feel, some of the, the normal everyday people, you do have the restaurants, the larger ones, that have their own trucks that come in, that are not passenger cars, they're larger than.
What we're gonna do is, we'll have a conversation with Restaurant Depot, with their operation, and see if there's something that we need to address in regards to, their customers and loading after they shop.
Because that's, every store I've ever been in has that. I don't see any way to do that.
I did note in the report, we kind of jumped around a little bit. Applicant needs to identify if there's going to be any cart corrals in the parking lot. Obviously, if there's cart corrals, those spaces would not count towards the required parking, so they should just detail plans for that as well.
We're gonna check with our tenant, we're gonna see what their requirements are, we're gonna relay it to our engineer, and they'll put it on the plan, if they have any requirements for that.
Very good.
I wanted to address the site lighting, because that's a big issue. And we do recognize that the lighting is, there's tall poles and they're older poles and they're older fixtures. We never factored in to the economics of this deal. I don't know, even though it might not be your concern, we never factored in that we're gonna go around and have to change out the site lighting for the shopping center. It's a very big undertaking because it's all underground trenching, conduits, wires, all new pole bases, and it's probably gonna double or maybe 2.5 times the amount of poles that are there now. So, and I have to have a conversation with who I report back to and explain where we are with this. But what I'd like to throw out there as perhaps a way to move this forward is the eastern section of the parking lot kind of sits by itself, and that's where Restaurant Depot and their parking field is. If you can allow us to make the improvements to that section of the parking lot as part of this application, and we have the remaining portion of the building, so it's about 112,000 square feet. Some of it is occupied by the Grand Buffet, the laundromat, the pizzeria, and the rest is empty. We have another big tenant that is seriously interested in taking a big portion of the space. So as, they saw that Restaurant Depot signed up, now we're gonna try and fill this. So after if we can make this deal with this other tenant, and perhaps that we can then move to the next
What we
portion.
could probably do, because we don't have the ability to vary the laws. That's the zoning board of appeals. We don't have the authority to say, okay, they're not legal, but go ahead and do it. We can't do that. But what we could probably do, is the Department of Law can answer this better, is give you time, 2, 3, whatever, I don't know.
Yes.
we could probably do that, but we don't have the ability to grant variances on town codes. We just don't have the authority.
We understand, and we're not looking to go through another, another board and go through that process. Its time is critical. This space has been vacant for over 10 years. We have a serious tenant. They made the commitment. We are moving forward, and we're hoping to get this in construction.
We
this year.
definitely want to work with you, but
Yeah.
like I said, we can't break the law because we don't have the authority
We don't,
to change it.
definitely don't want anybody to be breaking the
So
law.
what you're saying is that I'm looking at the drawing C20. The shaded portion
Right,
is what you would put the lighting on, not the entire.
right now. Give us an opportunity. Let's lock up another big tenant,
Gotcha.
get the economics
I just want to be
factored in,
clear.
and then move forward.
So the way because this site, it really operates as one commercial site, but it's actually across 7 different parcels. The way the improvements are currently proposed, it really is considering just that eastern side. There is a separate tax map where, what I'll say, the western portion of those buildings, those exist. So my recommendations, I think, we'll put it, the lighting right now is in violation. There's no question about it. If code enforcement wanted to go out there and issue tickets, I think they have a lot of stuff going on with them, but I was really only looking at it in terms of the east, the property, the subject parcels that are part of this site plan, because they really are separate tax map numbers. So, I'll speak with Jeff, we'll speak with Eileen, if that's amenable. I think that's a good way to move forward. We constantly hear about reusing vacant buildings and the need to fill these spaces, so I am fully understanding of that, and that's really what my recommendations were. We're kind of dealing with the eastern portion of the site to begin with. If they come in for the western portion, we'll address it at that point.
Sure. We hope that we are soon.
We do too.
With another tenant, yeah.
You get a big anchor store in these places, foot traffic increases and things pick up from there, so, it might be a way, if we can make it work, that might be a good way to move forward.
We just, really supportive of you coming, but we have to make sure you're a good neighbor because people live back there. And they're
Definitely not. We've
empire.
been,
Yeah.
for the long time that we've been operating the center, we've had relationships with our neighbors, and we try to do what we can to keep the peace.
I actually did a little research on Restaurant Depot themselves, and they seem to be a really good company, and I think that it would be a benefit for Riverhead to have them here, so I look forward to continuing.
We appreciate the support. We think the same. Our experience negotiating with Restaurant Depot, they're extremely responsive, they're hands-on. They've got a, different than dealing with a national chain where you gotta, you wait for answers and it goes up the ladder. So we're excited about that. We
That's great.
appreciate the support from, the town.
I have gotten calls, people have asked me, what's going on with this. Not just Riverhead, but, like you said, the whole east end of Long Island. Right now, the closest one is in Bohemia, so this would help out a lot of businesses regionally.
Right.
Yeah, I have one other question. If we have a tenant that is interested to take the next section, a big block of space next to Restaurant Depot, and part of what we would have to do is to make a marquee and storefront for their entrance to get in. Is that a site plan process, or is that just a building permit process?
Yeah, and any modification to the building that requires a building permit, so facade renovations, marquees, it would be site plan.
It would be another site plan. Okay, well, we gotta give.
They're all
Restaurant
steps
Depot
in the right
open.
direction for your complex
Yeah.
there. I think it's a
Absolutely. And,
wonderful project.
we're not gonna get sidetracked. We're extremely focused, getting Restaurant Depot approved, getting construction going, and getting them open.
Great, great.
Where is the RPZ device going to go?
It's on the south side of the building, interior. There'll be a new water.
Interior.
Yep, there'll be a new water tap. On the south side, there's an existing water service that runs the site. It'll be tapped in at that location. Pretty much right in the southwest corner of our proposed tenant.
And they are also doing minor modifications to the sewer line in the back. Right now, the sewer line kind of goes through where the proposed loading dock are, so they're going to loop that
They
around.
extended further east with a new manhole to continue the connection to the north.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Something else, if I might just touch on the noise. We did provide 2 mitigation options in our noise study. The reason behind that was, at the time, Restaurant Depot had fully engineered their rooftop units and the structure. So we wanted to provide two options for those rooftop units for mitigation. The one option being shifting two of the units further north, away from the residential lots. The other option providing a roof screen or a roof-type screen around the units with sound mitigation within it. One of those mitigation options will be selected by Restaurant Depot once we move through the planning process. But all the ground or site mitigation will be the same.
So they haven't decided on it?
For the rooftop units, they have not decided. They will pick one once we get through the engineering process. But the site-located mitigation is the same in both scenarios.
And I mean, I do know both of those mitigation measures, 1 and 2, they're still both well within compliance. There was only one slight increase by 1 decibel at one of the locations. I mean,
Yeah, either one of those.
yeah, I mean, it's not going to really have a substantive.
Really like to see you guys propose some kind of mitigation between the neighbors instead of the town telling you what you have to do, you know? Those trucks are gonna be idling back there, and we just wanna make sure the neighborhood's protected.
I understand. Okay, that's something that we're going to talk about.
Very good.
And I will follow up with your question on the trucks. I'll send them over to Greg.
Thank you.
For
Thank
the
you so much.
frequency and timing.
It was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so
Okay,
much for
thank
coming
you.
in
Thank you
today.
guys for your time.
Thank you.
Any ballpark timeline of when they're gonna open?
We're ready to go. We're ready to go. I'm ready to put plans out to bid and start selecting, but I think the first step is we have to get through the site plan approval process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next up, we have Bating Hollow Farm Vineyard, and this is going to be with Greg Bergman again.
Hello.
How are you today?
Hello. I'm Sean Kelly, owner of Bating Hollow Farm Vineyard.
Hello, pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Congratulations on the appointment.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're here for a continued discussion for a site plan application that is before the planning board to construct an approximately 6,000 square foot wine pavilion tasting room, and accessory agricultural storage structures. The planning board had reviewed a resolution back in October of last year. It was a resolution to grant preliminary approval for the site plan. We had gotten through the review, we had gotten through SECRA, got through a public hearing. We had prepared a preliminary approval resolution. That resolution at that meeting in October failed to get adopted. Effectively, what that means, the board did not render a decision on the application. They did not approve it, or they did not deny it. So the applicant, Mr. Kelly, wanted to come back, discuss with the planning board ways to move forward. I believe one of the big sticking points was outdoor music, and the potential for disruptions to the neighborhood and neighboring properties. I did, just for the board's reference, the last site plan that I had reviewed for a vineyard or, brewery, et cetera, was the Jamesport Farm Brewery. Now, in that final approval resolution, you'll see, which I did highlight, there were conditions that there will be no music played outside the building, and the noise ordinance provisions of the town code of the town of Riverhead shall at all times be complied with by the owner of the property and operator of the business. And there was also a condition that the tasting room and all other public activities on the property shall close no later than 9 p.m. Those were included in the final approvals that was adopted by the board. The applicant for Jamesport Farm Brewery did file covenants to that effect on the property. So, I mean, there is a precedence for establishing restrictions on outdoor music. So really, I'll let the board ask questions of the applicant, he can answer it, and see if there's a way to move forward with the application.
Mr. Kelly, do you have a picture of the barn, proposed barn with you?
Do you have
Got a couple letters,
the elevations? I got them on my phone.
a couple letters about preserving.
Meaning the architectural elevations
Yeah.
for the,
I mean,
I gave you some
we
color.
got a couple letters about preserving the nature of Sound Avenue, and that fits in like a glove as far as I'm concerned. I thought it was beautiful.
I know I've got them electronically, I don't know if I have them here in the file.
All right, no sweat.
How far-
Just-
But I mean,
How far back
it is a
is it
wood
from the
clad, I mean,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
it echoes a agricultural building. It did get approval from the ARB, they had reviewed it. It is gonna be set back, actually, I do have elevations here.
There we go.
678 feet, if I remember correctly, something crazy like that.
The current tasting house is 40 feet from Sound Avenue. The new tasting house will be 213 feet from Sound Avenue.
But you're still going to keep the old one.
Excuse me?
You're going to keep the old one, correct?
Yes.
I did take my wife there one Sunday. We had a glass of wine, and I was expecting a great big rock band, but there was two people, and it was, got outside the tent, you couldn't hear it.
Yeah, the most we've ever had was a three-piece band. But for the most part, it's either just single players or duets.
Do you already have equipment set up outside for music?
Yes. So, when I purchased the vineyard, I was well aware of pending litigation against the prior owner by the town of Riverhead. And one of the main contentions were complaints about the music, because the old owner used to have full-blown rock bands there.
Right.
And the town of Riverhead sued him for that, and believe it or not, the town of Riverhead actually lost on that position because there were no violations recorded against them for the sound, despite the fact people were complaining about it. But I knew about that. I had already met my neighbors across the street, and the first thing I did before I even opened is we installed a sound system. The purpose of the sound system is that all the performers that come there with just a mixing board and two plugs. They plug in to my system. We have amplifier racks and everything, so we can regulate the music throughout the area. We have multiple acres of area where people can sit around, and we'd like for them to hear the music. So if you're gonna play the music from there and have to hear it, 1,000 feet away, you gotta play it really loud for them to hear it, unless you have a sound system put in where the sound is regulated, and we have multiple volume control points throughout the vineyard. So if somebody's in the back, we can just turn that up a little bit, and there's never any sound leaving the vineyard. I invited all the board members over to the vineyard to take a listen. I'm not sure how many took me up on it, but
I would
anyone
like
that...
to come.
What's that?
I would like to come. I
Okay,
would like
great.
to see what you have going on there.
And they would have seen, if they had come, that the music doesn't leave my property. Me, my 4 boys, and my brother run the place on weekends, and we have our own, own meter or, sound meter. And by the time we walk to Sound Avenue, you can't hear the music at all. In fact, I took recordings from Sound Avenue. Basically, all you could hear is cars driving by. And when you do get a lull in the cars driving by, and you listen real closely, you maybe could hear a little bit of the music, but nowhere near the levels that are permitted under the current town code.
Right. Are
So-
you considering holding weddings there in the future?
Yeah, I would say the weddings would be primarily indoors in the new tasting house, although we do have beautiful grounds in the back. But like I said, so right now, everything is occurring, you got 40 feet back is the existing tasting house, okay? And then between the existing tasting house, there's an old barn that we're gonna knock down and replace with the new tasting house. It's in that area there, which is, basically 75 feet or so away from Sound Avenue is where, the music is currently playing. And again, you still can't hear it on Sound Avenue. But with the new tasting house, the back of that's gonna be 200 and something feet away. So if we were to have weddings, primarily it would be indoors, but if there were outdoor parts of the wedding, they would be 250 feet or even further back from Sound Avenue. And again, the music will be in our system. We in fact had one person that wanted to have a wedding last year in the back, and their DJ refused to plug in to the system. So we didn't let him have the wedding. That, it was a very simple decision. And So we were, we were ready to have our first wedding there, but it just didn't happen. And it was funny, when the town attorney had issued his memo, which was relied on by the board at the last hearing, the town attorney made note of numerous noise complaints that were going on in the town of Riverhead, and that as a result, the planning board should consider that. So as a result, I did a Freedom of Information request to see between September of 2020 to the present, how many noise complaints were made, because that's when I opened, September 2020. I was issued a copy of 13 complaints. All of them were from the Jamesport area. Nothing in Calverton, nothing in Baiting Hollow. But what I found most interesting about one of the letters from the Jamesport Civic Association, they were complaining about music at a couple of venues out there that I don't need to discuss right now. But this was a letter from Jamesport Civic Association. She's trying to give some solutions that the planning board or the town board can consider. And she says, another solution would be for the venue to supply the music, not the performers or even the host, and have full control of the volume. We already did that before she even wrote that. So, I mean, if that would satisfy that civic association, I don't understand why what we've already implemented wouldn't satisfy everyone. And we've met with all the neighbors. We had one neighbor that showed up at the hearing last time, and he said, oh, I don't even need to turn music on at my house between 12 and 6 on weekends because the music is blaring. Okay, well, I went to the neighbors on either side of his house, and they were like, no, we don't hear any music. And I said, did somebody come to your house to sign a petition? He goes, yeah. And when we told him we don't have any problems with the music, the guy was trying to like bully them into signing the petition anyway. Well, if I get an opportunity to have another hearing here, those two neighbors said they will show up. And then you can decide whether that one guy's telling the truth or those two families are telling the truth.
I think one of the concerns at the last hearings was the new building, and I think Chairman just alluded to it. You would be having weddings inside which would have bands or DJs, and that music would stay within the building and not be outside. And I thought there was a problem there that you felt with your sound system that couldn't work.
No. No, we never actually addressed that, but I will right now. Whatever's playing, whatever band is playing, whether it's playing in the tasting house or outside in the gazebo or whatever, they can be played throughout the whole vineyard.
I understand that.
And so if there's a band playing inside and somebody wants to sit outside on the patio and have a drink, they'll still hear the music. It's not going to be band level volume on the outside. It'll be whatever volume we set. And we set the volume at a level that two people can speak to each other.
In other words, inside the new building, if there's a band or a DJ, they have to go into your system.
Of course,
Is that right?
definitely, yep. And we're gonna set the whole new tasting house up. Now, anybody who's familiar with music, loud isn't better, but fullness is. It needs to be the same no matter where you are. And the only way to achieve that is with a lot of speakers. Now, somebody's saying, wow, a lot of speakers is gonna
Well,
make it
if
real
you
loud.
have, if you have a wedding going on and you still have people on the grounds doing wine tasting,
If
how's
we-
the music gonna mix?
If we have a wedding going on, that'll be in the new tasting house and everything, any part of the property north. The old tasting house will still be there.
Yeah.
So, and that's a lot smaller.
And
That
that
only has
music
a,
will still
a
be
s-
played.
Yeah, that only has a 70-person occupancy than the old tasting house. So people can still be there tasting, and we have other music sources. So we can put on Pandora in the front tasting house under those volume controls, and the people in the back won't hear it, and the people in the front won't hear the music in the back. Because we do that on weekends right now. We have two bands playing, one in the back, one in the front. The two bands can't hear each other. We have separate volume controls. There's a transition area next to the barn that one speaker It'll be slightly louder than the other, which will block out the front music. But again, we could have two bands going on at one time at this place, and you go out to Sound Avenue and you won't hear it. And that's why, you know, and every time, the guy who came in and complained at the last hearing, he's right across the street. Literally, his driveway is right across the street from my driveway. Me and my brother have gone there almost every single Saturday and Sunday since that last hearing to invite him over. He doesn't have a home. Never seen the guy, not once. And my brother's knocking on the door. My brother took his phone out and put his voice recording on to see if you could hear any music from this guy's house. So I don't know where he is on weekends, but he wasn't home all the times that we've gone there.
He doesn't stay home on weekends because of all the noise.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sorry, you said that you would keep the noise level to conversation level
Yes,
during a wedding?
sure.
I can honestly say that sounds like a cocktail hour, not a wedding,
Well, then they
not the
will,
reception.
then those people will choose not to have their wedding at my facility. Now, inside the tasting house, we could have a little bit more leeway because it's going to be a soundproof, self-contained building. You're not going to hear it from outside anyway, but still, we always picture an indoor-outdoor type wedding. And, you know, nobody
Right.
goes to a vineyard to go inside a building. You go to a
Exactly.
vineyard to be outside among the vines, and outside there is where we would have, you know, full control of it. And again, we're not looking for dance party type weddings. You know, we're looking for more of a, you know, sophisticated clientele that wants to be, you know, in a beautiful post and beam structure and be able to walk among the vines, you know, with their clientele. And again, if like the last person, if their DJ refuses to hook up to my system, then they just can't have it. That's the bottom line.
I visited the facility. It's really kind of unique. There's no, I didn't see any noise problem at all. The way, more speakers, again, more control, everybody hears the music, but it's not, you don't need to project because it's within the space you're in, so you can, and that's one of the things I personally dislike, when you sit down somewhere and I can't talk to someone
Right,
next to me.
right.
You know, you don't have that happening there, believe me.
We had somebody bring up the fact that it's called a stadium sound system. So I said, if it's a stadium sound system, it has to be really, really loud. Well, what a stadium sound system is, you remember, you know, Phil Rizzuto at Yankee Stadium, when it said batting next, and it was next. Well, that's because you lose a tenth of a second of sound every 100 feet between speakers. So we have speakers all the way around. We have them go through computers. They're all synchronized. So every single part of the song comes out at the exact same time, no matter where you're sitting. There is no echo in a way. That's one of the biggest problems with having a big, wide open area filled with music, is that you either have to project it from one side across, then there'll be no echoes, or you have to have a system that's synchronized. And that's what this system does. I mean, amplifiers alone to set up this system was $20,000, $30,000 just for the amplifiers. Forget about all the individual speakers. This was not, you know, a toy that we set up. We set this thing up because, like I said, I met the neighbors across the street. They told me the horror stories of the old owners, and from day one, you know, they're regular customers. They walk across the street, you know, every weekend. And they read about the denial of the application in the local newsletter or newspaper, and that's when, you know, they came over and sought me out. And then they were both pointing out, you know, with that guy, because that was in the article, what the guy said. And they were like, what is he talking about? And they said, well, you know, they gave me their phone numbers and everything. They said, listen, next time you have an opportunity for me to speak in front of the board, they're going to come in. And these are the two people that live on both sides. So,
That sounds like you have a pretty nice place over there.
thanks.
Anybody have any?
Where do we go from here? Greg?
Oh, can I have, you know, one more suggestion, you know, going forward. Right now, the existing barn that's there, like I said, is going to be replaced by the new barn, pretty much the same size. On the existing barn, we have 4 speakers on the south elevation facing Sound Avenue. And the way we're going to be setting up that area between the old tasting house and the new tasting house, we don't need those speakers. So in addition to all the other requirements that were included in the previous resolution, I'd be willing to include in that we will not mount any speakers on the south elevation of that building which faces Sound Avenue, because I think we all came to an agreement that Sound Avenue was the only area that would have any concerns, because we're 2,500 to 3,000 feet away from the nearest house to the north.
I think that was another concern.
So Sound Avenue, they are close. So we were looking at it, it's like, well, we don't need speakers there because people, we have little ones on the existing tasting house facing north. And so I just thought that would be, another thing that we could add to the resolution to hopefully alleviate any of the concerns of, any neighbors that may have a problem.
In that resolution that failed to be adopted in October, there was a condition that the site plan shall be revised to show the location, I believe it was location and orientation of speakers, as well as model and manufacturer numbers, so we could have a map of where these speakers are, where they're oriented, and the type of speakers they are.
And then we can move forward.
Yeah, I think, move
I mean,
forward.
that's up to the board's discretion. The board, I do believe the board has to act one way or another.
You have to give us another resolution.
And I mean, if there's any specific conditions, communicate them to me. I'll ensure that,
There was one question about hours of operation.
Hours of operation?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have anything in there regarding hours of operation. Currently, our hours of operation are between like noon and 6, 7 p.m. But,
So a
course it-
restriction would be okay with you?
well, if we have weddings, obviously it'd be a little bit later than that.
So I mean, I think that's why I presented to the board that Jamesport Farm Brewery, where we did put the restriction on for 9 p.m. There are residences in the area. I think when that was happening, I mean, Vineyard 48 was kind of fresh in everyone's mind. There was a concern that these things would just kind of proliferate and turn into, party town,
Right.
which is
But
really what
I
we're
just
trying to
think
avoid. So, I mean,
it's a different operation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to
First off-
present some
Yeah,
context.
but first off, that was a brewery that was seeking permission to be established, okay? This vineyard here has been, since 2007, was given a site plan approval by this board in 2007 with no restrictions on music, has been playing music every weekend since then, and then the new restrictions by the last chairman wanted to be no music. So to compare it to the brewery is really not a fair, comparison, because they hadn't even established yet. So to take basically the whole basic business plan of this vineyard is people hanging out outside listening to music. Now all of a sudden you want to take that away. I mean, it's very difficult to make ends meet at a vineyard as it is. Now all of a sudden you take away the outdoor music. So one of the big things at the last hearing was there was 100 petitions signed. For whatever reason, they didn't want music outside. Well, I took it upon myself. I have about 1,300 signatures on a petition that basically says that if there's no music here at Beatty Hollow Farm Vineyard, they're gonna go down the block. They'll go to Jamesport to listen to music, even though Jamesport has a stipulation that they won't play music, or they'll go to Live, they'll go to the Cooperage, they'll go to RGNY, they'll go to Palmer Vineyards, and they even said, you know what? Because there was some rumblings around that, maybe the town board is going to impose a music restriction on all of Sound Avenue. And they said, well, then that's the case, then they'll just go to Southold to listen to music. Because you're not going to sit outside, drink wine, and think that the intellectual conversation of the table is going to hold the day. They like the music.
I think I'd like to make a recommendation that we bring up the resolution as it was written then, and see if it has garnered 3 votes.
How do you ensure if a new owner comes in, that they're responsible? Like,
Excuse me, I can't hear. I couldn't hear.
well, you're portraying yourself as a responsible owner. What are you gonna do
You
about
can't
the new owner?
legislate human behavior, if someone's gonna break the law, they're gonna break the law.
Well, that was my point to begin with. There are statutes on the book in the town of Riverhead that control outdoor amplified music. There's sections of it. It talks about the equipment, it talks about the volume levels. There are plenty of laws in place to hold us in check. I'm adding more things that we're willing to do, like the sound system, like this Jamesport Civic Association was recommending to the town of Riverhead, that maybe these facilities that are playing music out loud, outside too loud, should invest the money into a sound system that will make the customers happy without interrupting the neighbors. We've already done that.
Unfortunately, we can't do that, but I mean, I just, like I said, I've been there, it's musical. Loud music isn't a problem.
I mean, we would, there was a condition in the approval resolution. I mean, when we get to final, we would have the applicant file covenants on the property. They would include all those conditions, and I mean, we would list, that any performers, any music, just the way it was written in the resolution. I think we did the way the resolution was originally written, I think we did our best job to try to address all those issues. The applicant files covenants on the property that'll run with the current owner and any heirs or successors to the, property. Beyond that, I mean, I don't really know how you, like you said,
But all it
legislate human behavior.
addresses, if he's addressing all the codes that are already on the books, man, how do you?
You can't presuppose a violation.
No, you
That's-
can't.
By that, a single-family residence could violate.
And you can't single out his place, because we all know what's going on,
Anyway, that's the,
I say that we write the resolution as you just suggested.
So I'll take the resolution. If we need to modify it at all, I'll go through it again. I'll circulate it to the board. If they want to consider it, we
yeah,
can
just
consider it for the next meeting.
underline or asterisk something that you added.
Yeah, all right, we'll consider that at the next meeting if the board wants.
I want to readdress what Eileen had said about what happens if we let this go through, you sell, we end up with who knows who coming in there, and they totally take advantage of,
Restricted covenants flow with the land. That would be incumbent upon the new owners as well.
Yeah.
So if they chose not,
restrictive covenant?
the covenants
So
is
we,
that-
typically, when we get the final approval, we list a, list of conditions, site plans approval granted subject to the following conditions. We would have any applicant file covenants on that property, and it really recites pretty much the approval resolution within there, so those would be captured and filed.
okay.
so it's
that
not just
would
something
run-
I'm agreeing to, it's being imposed on the property which will flow to any subsequent owners.
Okay, I understand. And then, as far as the hours of operation go, if you're having a wedding there, in your mind, what time do you think that wedding should come to an end?
I would say no later than midnight. If you figure a wedding from 7 to 11, need some time to clean up and get everybody out of there.
I thought your wedding was outdoors.
No, the weddings will be in the new
No, but I
tasting
mean,
house.
an indoor, outdoor.
Well, cocktail hour, but by the end of by the end of the night, everybody's gonna be working their way inside. But again, you still can't hear the music from the property anyway. The only, thing is that people will be leaving, at night, which is a lot less traffic late at night anyway, so it's probably a good time to leave. Then at 7 o'clock, as people are waiting in line to leave because the Sound Avenue is a parking lot at that time, so. But we don't even have any weddings scheduled yet, so it's not even, but I'm just picturing somebody's gonna have a wedding, I say that you gotta be done with your wedding at 7 o'clock. And, I mean, all I would say is, whatever restrictions are currently placed on Palmer and RGNY, because they're right down the block on Sound Avenue, I'll comply with them. But I know that they have their weddings until at least 10 o'clock.
There's a big difference between 10 and midnight.
Sure. But like I said, when you're saying midnight, is the place gonna be cleared out? I still need to have the place cleaned up, the parking lot's gonna empty. I would say midnight to have
That's right, 10
a
o'clock.
safe
I'm more
buffer
concerned
zone.
with the music.
Good time.
Oh, the music?
I mean, I would, if the wedding ends at 10 o'clock, we
Yeah.
understand your staff's gotta clean
Right.
up, but they're not, someone running a vacuum and cleaning dishes is not gonna be
I can't see
generating
a
any
lot
kind
of
of
music
noise.
going on until midnight.
Like I said, it's very easy for me to inquire from my, pretty friendly down there. I'll just, I'm pretty sure that their weddings, at least on their website, say that the weddings are until 10, but then I saw some parts on there where they talked about extra hours, if you want to add it to the wedding. I don't know if that was an hour before or an hour later, but I've never been to one of their weddings, so I couldn't tell.
Is there a limit on how many weddings they can have in this proposal?
This is, the principal use of the property is agriculture, the growing grapes, the vineyard and tasting room and processing is accessory. New York State Ag and Markets, and I did recite some of it in that preliminary approval resolution, there are guidelines from New York State Ag and Markets which dictate how vineyards and farm breweries, that sort of thing, can utilize weddings to help support and market their products. There are guidelines in there, and I did include it in the resolution, that the applicant would need to provide on an annual basis, basically like an accounting of the events that take place, to make sure that this is not just a catering hall that also
So
sells
no more
wine.
than 30% of our revenue could be generated from non-wine selling. So weddings can never exceed 30% of the total revenue. So how many weddings, that would be dictated by where, if we get to that 30%.
Where does your food come from? You don't have the facility to do it?
No, we
premise.
would just use outside caterers. My plan, because I'm not a party coordinator or wedding planner, I would just want to rent the place out for the day, a site fee, and then have a wedding planner come in and they'll coordinate, the flowers and the food and stuff like that. The only thing that I would control is the selling of my wine. Like a normal-
And the noise.
What's that?
And
And
the
the
music.
yeah.
Okay.
And the packaging yourself.
What's that?
And the packaging of the same by your own staff.
Yep.
I think what kind of scared everybody was the fact that if it's only 30%, but if you suddenly say the hours of operation are to midnight, when normally it's not,
Again, I just want to be treated the same way as the other vineyards, because anything that gets imposed upon me that's not on them, it's just going to be an unfair disadvantage, to my vineyard that we're trying, to grow.
Can we, how do we address that? Is it
Well, that would be
possible?
true of Jamesport Farm Brewery, too, who have restrictions, right?
Yeah.
They have restrictions.
But again, they're the only brewery, and that wasn't part of their business plan to start with. When a comparison's made to venues on Sound Avenue, I'm not compared to Jamesport Brewery. It's a brewery. But if people have a choice of 3 vineyards on Sound Avenue, and one of them has got all these restrictions, they're not gonna have their wedding at my place.
Are there site plans of these ones he's talking about?
I'm sure there are, I'd have to go back and look. I don't know what conditions would have been imposed on them when they were
Are they old?
established. Was that?
Are they old?
They're older, yeah.
I did have one of their, one of the vineyards had something in their advertising about hours.
He is an attorney as well. Yes.
Yeah, it was, Palmer Vineyards has something on their website that says that music will be over at 10 p.m. pursuant to town code. When I looked up the town code, I couldn't find it. They just may put that on there just to give authority to to their customers. So Palmer says 10 p.m. is when the music goes off. As far as, when they
Right,
make people
right.
leave, I don't know. But that was the only part about sound or music that they had listed. They said it was pursuant to town code.
Is 10 PM acceptable to you?
For the music? Yeah. I was just trying to give a buffer to get
Yeah,
the
no, I hear
place,
you.
emptied out. I mean, sometimes people will just be sitting around in the parking lot afterwards, and I don't want all of a sudden, code enforcement coming in and
Right,
say, hey,
right.
it's 11:45.
But if the wedding's over at 10,
Mm-hmm.
people are gonna leave. Sure.
Okay. Well, Mr. Kelly, it was a pleasure meeting you
You too.
today, and I cannot wait to come to your establishment and check it out. And I look glass of wine.
We'll be reopening the first week in February.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to the Riverhead Charter School. Greg, you're a busy guy this week.
Yeah. We have some open positions, so hopefully we'll be getting some backups soon.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
You're welcome. We have Kim Judd here as the attorney representing the application. So what we have before us is a site plan to convert an existing building back into a charter school. The site is located at 5117 Sound Avenue in Riverhead. The establishment of the school required a special permit from the town board. The town board granted that special permit on December 21st of 2021. The only condition that the town board granted it subject to was that prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant must receive site plan approval from the Riverhead Planning Board. In terms of the modifications to the site, the modifications proposed are very minor. They're going to consist of handicap accessible access ramps on the back of the building. They're going to delineate some of the parking stalls. They are going to update the sanitary system. They're going to install one of the new IA systems. Very minor site improvements as well as lighting. So we're just here before the board to see, when we had the public hearing for the special permit, there was nobody that came out for it, no objections. The only objection that was raised was by the owner of the vineyard across the street. He was concerned that the establishment of the school would impact his liquor license and ability to sell wine. That issue was addressed. It was not going to affect him at all. He was his business was already established. So now we're here before the board to see if the board, how would like to proceed. If you'd like to have a public hearing on this site plan application, or if you would like to handle it administratively.
Did the town board have a public hearing?
The town board did have a public hearing. Like I said, nobody came and spoke. The only correspondence we received was from the neighboring vineyard owner.
I
So
think
the
we
one
should.
thing about the town board hearing was we were required to send our notices to properties within 500 feet. And I think that captures more properties than doing your public hearings. I think your requirement is 200 feet. So again, I think the fact that that town board level, when we had to send our mailings out, we had 500 feet. We had to do a special map for that to show all the properties that it would have to be noticed. And as Greg said, nobody appeared. One thing is that the planning board has done over the years administratively when there's no exterior changes to the building. So we're not changing or adding any square footage to this building. We're adding a handicap ramp because we have to comply with ADA. And we asked that the landscaping plan be waived because the property is beautifully landscaped and manicured already. Greg did ask us to update the lighting, which is in our plan, so we're going to update our lighting. He asked for signage, the aprons for the driveways, which we're going to be doing. And I think this is a good candidate, this application, to be handled administratively if the board also agrees.
This is a school going back to a school.
School that
Yeah,
became, it's been a couple of things throughout the years,
I
but
think
yes,
we should
it was
handle
a
it
school, I know.
administratively myself.
Spoke with Richard Wines, he said his mother went to school there in the 30s, so yes, it would be a return to form,
Yeah.
school back into a school. The town board felt that it was an appropriate location for it, so they granted the special permit, so. Of all the applications we're reviewing, this is probably the most benign.
Are there any concerns with the traffic where the buses are concerned, being on Sound Avenue?
So I did, when we first presented this, we got the special permit, and then the application was referred to the planning board. One of the concerns I raised was just a bus stacking plan. They did provide a bus stacking plan, which I believe demonstrates they can have, I believe, 7 buses on site. So 7 buses on site queuing with within their site fully, it would not impact, would not go onto Sound Avenue. One of the things I did mention, I mean, now if there's gonna be buses bringing kids to school, there may also be parents dropping their kids off, how that might impact. I think I spoke to Kim, she said they were maybe going to widen one of the areas a little bit to, if it,
Right here to pull off.
basically to allow like kind of a separate area for vehicles to pull off that would not interfere with the bus queue.
And I think as far as traffic is concerned, the buses would be dropping off in the morning. There's no traffic effects at that time, and taking the kids home between 2:30 and 3:30. And it's during the week, it's not on the weekend to interfere with the pumpkin traffic that happens in the fall, because this is again Monday through Friday, not on Saturday and Sunday.
You definitely need some traffic control. but
Every
the day
school
of the
has
week
one.
is-
Yeah, every school in this town has a
Sound
traffic
Avenue,
guard.
they're moving on Sound Avenue. It's, nobody drives
Yeah,
slow down.
they have a crossing guard at their other location. They'll have a crossing guard here. as
So
all
this will
those
become a
schools do.
school zone, so there'll have to be signs put up.
That, is that something, it's a town-owned road, so it's not owned by the county.
It's a tough area there.
I mean, you have to restrict the traffic there, their speed, so there's going to have to be something.
Generally, those signs are at all schools, certainly in town and throughout the county. On both directions.
I'm sure there's
So that's highway department, right, Greg?
It is highway department.
And often they
I'll
have
look,
actually
I'll look
flashing
into that,
signs.
I'll see if there's, that might require some town board action to change speed limits on a town road, but I will look into that.
You're gonna try to change the speed limit there?
I mean, typically, I mean, from every school zone that I've passed, you see the big yellow sign,
They
school
don't have
zone.
it on, across
Middle Country
River
Road?
Hills Goat Farm there. They
Yeah,
never changed the speed limit there.
In Calverton?
there is-
Aquabog.
No, Aquabog at the Lutheran Church is a Methodist.
Let's look into that. I think we gotta be really careful.
Yeah,
Lowering the speed limit less than 45 there.
remember it's 20 miles
20,
an hour?
usually 20.
Yeah, and I did also, I mean, when
It's
I,
based on the actual speed limit of the road, though, and how much it's reduced.
Well, I
So there are
think
school
it's
zones
at
that are
least
30.
40,
There are school
40
zones that are
miles an hour
30.
on Sound Avenue there.
What's that?
I'm sure that it's at least 40 miles an hour now. It's
That's-
50 on Sound Avenue?
That's slow.
45.
That's slow for Sound
Sound
Avenue.
Avenue's 45, the whole length.
I'll speak with Eileen, we'll look into this. I did, when we first reviewed it, I did see if the board would want to consider making right turnout only for buses, rather than have a bus cross Sound Avenue to make a left. I don't know if the board would
Depends
like.
on their schedule, I guess. It would-
But that's going
It's a
to
good
impact
idea
one
if
of
it
the,
worked.
one of the side roads is going to pick up all of that traffic.
So, I mean,
I know
if-
it's 7
If you have a
buses,
crossing guard,
probably
it should-
3 or 4,
Yeah,
but
if you had,
still.
if you had 7 buses, they would go out, if the board were to require right out for buses, they would make a right going east on Sound Avenue, and I believe they would head south on Church Lane. I believe that's the
Yes,
next.
it is.
So they would, they'd have to loop around. I mean, again, I don't know where the kids are located, it may not be conducive to their travel plans, but just something that the board offered it for consideration to prevent left-hand turns across it, and just, anytime a bus is crossing over multiple lanes of traffic, there's just more potential
Right,
for
right.
traffic, an accident.
Personnel. They're gonna need personnel. Just get on the road.
Okay, I think that's good for us for today. Thank you so much for.
So we'll handle.
So you'll handle it administratively?
Yes.
Are there any,
I think
so
that's
the
the best
conditions,
thing to do.
well, before we do that, we'll follow up, get access to the speed limit. They'll make any necessary changes to the vehicular circulation plan, and the board does not want to require the right out only for buses?
A couple buses.
I think that's a good idea, but generally, if they have a crossing guard,
Right.
you can get the last, but I guess it would be other times when there's nobody there.
And I'll just confirm with my client about the crossing guard, and I know that's usually provided by the police department. I'll talk to the chief too as well about that.
Was there a request regarding the landscaping, or is that?
I had made a request to waive it because it's already
made a
landscaped.
Yeah, I mean,
Here,
the
this
site,
one.
the
But I put it in
site's,
my application.
Okay.
the site is well landscaped. There is one, right now they've got sufficient parking for their proposed use. The students will not be driving themselves to school, so the parking on site will only be for staff. They do show a land-banked parking area to the east side of the building. In the event that the plan, there is a provision in our code to allow for land-banked parking. They would need to file an instrument, a covenant to allow for future build-out of that parking upon subsequent finding. So where that existing, right at the back of the existing parking lot, there is kind of a nice row of vegetation. That vegetation would need to be removed if they were going to build out that parking lot. So if they were going to do that, they should maybe just provide a landscaping plan to show what the build, what it would be if they're going to build it out.
No parent-teacher nights.
Oh, I'm sure there will be.
Where would they park?
They would park, there's parking spaces along here in the front and then over here.
I believe they've got
In front of the
20
building.
stalls on site, so I mean that, maybe they would want to consider building that parking lot out.
Well, my client is leasing this. They don't own the property. That's something I'd have to take up with the landlord. I think he may have an issue with us building this out because, again, it's a lease. They are looking for a more permanent home. This is something that they're doing as a short-term solution because they have 10 through 12 and they don't have any place to put them. So they are looking for a place with a more permanent solution. It's a 7-year lease. I don't know if the property owner is going to be on board with building this out. I don't think there's going to be a need for it because the school has gone over this plan and their parking needs at the other place, and they don't feel that they're going to exceed these 20 spaces.
So
But-
there's no kids are driving their
No.
cars to school?
No,
That's a rule, or,
yes.
and there'll be no parking on Sound Avenue for parent-teacher night, or?
Well, you're not allowed to park on Sound Avenue regardless, but I don't anticipate that there's 106 students that are proposed. I don't think there will be an overflow situation. If there is, then we have to file something to show that in the event we need to trigger these additional 12 spaces, that we will have to do that. But to do it right outset, and there's no need demonstrated yet, I think would be a problem with the property owner. If it comes to the point where a need is demonstrated, they're not going to want people to be parking all over the place. We'll talk to the property owner at the time, and then we can trigger those spaces if there is a need for it.
Now, this is for grades 10 through 12?
Yes. Is Amy Lamonaco in the Zoom? Can you let her in? She's the president of the Board of Trustees. I'll let her speak to
Right.
that.
This is just something I have here from about a year ago. This is for temporary classroom trailers, correct?
No. That was
No?
at the
Changed
Calverton
it?
site. That application has kind of died off. This is for Sound Avenue. Nothing to do with Middle Country Road. This is,
What's the history of this building anyway? What was it way back when?
Schoolhouse. Another one took it.
yeah, I mean, it's been a schoolhouse. It was a kitchen.
Christian Academy.
Christian Academy. It was leased by Long Island Kitchens. There were some applications in the past to establish some kind of wine tasting room.
That was from the property owner. I don't think that was ever pursued.
So just my only, when an applicant makes a site plan or a special permit application on a property they don't own, they do fill out an owner's endorsement. So that just gives me a little pause for concern when, say, the property owner might, it's like, if we're approving a site plan that shows land bank parking, that
And you do that all the time. You guys land bank spaces all the time.
no, I know, but when
And then
we
the
approve a
event
site
they
plan, we're saying
trigger-
like, okay, here's where you could build parking out.
Yes.
To say that the owner then might not agree with it, it's like he filled
No,
out an
the-
owner's.
You're talking, what you said was to build it out right now with this. Okay, the code allows us, or the planning board, to waive parking
Correct.
spaces if there's no need demonstrated, but you have to show them. And the planning board has done it plenty of times where you have people land bank, the Walmart parking center, there are land bank spots that you approved with your site plan that haven't been triggered yet. So this is the same concept, is that we're showing this, and in the event that the land bank spaces need to be triggered, we we will address
But
it at
so,
that
so
time.
in the event that it is triggered, the owner would be okay with it?
In the event that there's a need for it, yes, but to say, because the problem is, it's all landscaped, and you're gonna be pulling out all his landscaping, all his grass, and then you don't need spaces, so,
I mean, I do it, right now, the plan shows 12, 14, 21, it shows a total of 23 parking stalls. You know, that would be delineated that meet code, so 23 parking stalls, in the event, and again, parent-teacher night, I mean, they could probably squeeze an extra couple of cars in there. I'm not advocating for building out that parking lot at the moment. I think we'd be fine with putting a provision in there for future land bank parking upon subsequent finding from the board.
yeah, and I think that's in all of your
Yeah.
approvals when you do land banking. You've done it on many applications on Route 58 where you've land banked spaces, and it's in the conditions that if the need arises, and it's in the code, the planning board can trigger the additional land bank spaces.
Now, they would have to file a covenant. The code requires a legal instrument to allow for that upon subsequent finding from the board.
You got a bus storage area or a standby? Or where do you go?
Did you do a report on this?
Yes, I did back in September of last year when we first presented it to the board.
I couldn't find it.
Do you want to ask Mike?
Can I just hold that for 1 second? Eileen, I don't know if this makes a difference, but Department of Motor Vehicle for 17-year-olds that have passed driver's ed,
Can drive.
they can drive. And once they have so many hours with the driver's ed, when they're 16, I believe, no, they can only drive to
They cannot
work.
drive to high school without a full license.
But at 17, you can drive to school.
Nope, only college, unless you have a full license.
Okay.
So you can't drive with a junior license.
But I don't think, the school's not going to allow the students to
No.
drive.
So that'll be in there or something. Okay.
Well, I'll let Ms. Lamonaco speak to that. She said
I-
that, testified that the
Okay.
school was not going to.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I could expand on that. I hope, can you hear me okay? Sorry, I can't be
Yes.
there in person.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So our plan to occupy this space this coming fall will be 9 through 11. We don't yet have a 12th grade because we're expanding internally year over year. So to speak to any potential student drivers, that would not happen when they're in the 11th grade. We wouldn't have 12th grade till the following year. But as a school, we've made the decision at this point that we would not allow the students to drive themselves to school. There will be about 106 students in the school that we project once it is 9 through 12, but this coming fall would only be 9 through 11. Right now, our high school consists of only 9 and 10, with the 11th grade coming in next year. I hope that
There was
helps.
another question the chairperson had. You had another question a while ago.
Oh, boy. About the speed zone for
The crossing guard, Amy.
Oh, yes, we currently have a crossing guard at our site and would have a crossing guard at this site as well. We would collaborate with the town police department, who provides our crossing guard currently, to have one at this site as well. And then just one other point you brought up about parent-teacher night. Our current process when we do parent-teacher night at our main campus is we don't do all grades at one time to limit traffic. So we have a staged approach. So we would do the same. We wouldn't have all grade parent-teacher night at the same time.
Okay.
I just think that given the fact that this is Sound Avenue, you really need to have the warning signs, speed limit signs put there.
I'll work with Mr. Bergman on that with who's the highway superintendent now? I'm sorry.
Mike Zaleski.
Like with Mike.
So the board's all right with handling this administratively, capturing the conditions regarding school zone speed limits, crossing guards, restrictions from having students drive their vehicles to campus, and the land bank parking provision.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy
Happy
the
New
rest
Year.
of your day.
You too.
Thank you.
Finally, we're going to move on to KFC, facet improvements. And we have
All right.
Greg with us
I
now.
promise this is the last one. That's it. So we've got an administrative site plan application seeking approval to renovate the facade of an existing fast food restaurant, as well as update site lighting and landscaping. Proposed action is a type 2 action under SECRA, as it involves maintenance and repair with no substantial changes to the facility. The plans were reviewed by the Architectural Review Board on October 27th. The applicant subsequently redesigned the plans based on the recommendations of the ARB. They circulated them in December, and the ARB recommended approval of the plans as proposed. This one's pretty simple. There were just a couple of pieces that we wanted to try to capture on here. On the southeast corner of the property with KFC, you can see on page 3, it seems as though there's an existing driveway or curbing that would allow for a future cross-access to the parcel located to the south. I think it would be good planning to require a future cross-access agreement at that southeastern corner to allow, in the event that that property to the south is ever developed, just to allow for future cross-access.
Does that property have an entrance from someplace?
So that property is actually part of the, I believe it's the Tire Country parcel. It fronts on Old Country Road, and then it's kind of an
They
L-shaped
have an
property.
approved site plan, don't they?
I don't know if the site plan ever got approved. I know there has been, that was back when Karen was here. I think she was working on it. I honestly, I don't know. I think that's probably a dead application at this point. Yeah, the access is effectively already constructed. We would just be looking to formalize that and have the applicant file a future cross-access in the event that that's ever developed. If that site ever comes into the south for another site plan, we'd address it and, have them punch through at that point.
Makes sense.
There was some minor, I noted again with the lighting, there were some exterior lighting fixtures that didn't meet code. So I've just, in the approval resolution, I've just included the conditions that the applicant file that future cross-access agreement and provide a lighting plan that brings all exterior lighting into compliance. Beyond that, this one's pretty straightforward, simple facade improvements. Board have any other questions?
It would be a good idea to include cross-access.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, anytime, it's a good planning tool. It reduces the number of curb cuts, reduces, it just allows, the way this site operates, they have cross-access between all 3 parcels out from Roanoke. Cross-access is just a good planning tool, so when we have them in for an application, it's when we try to get those conditions imposed. I did speak to the architect or the construction company who's working on this. She is aware of those conditions. That would require the owner's approval and the owner to be able to file those covenants on the property. So she is working with that owner, and they are making them aware that this will be required.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Okay. Do you have anybody with comments from the public on the resolutions?
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Dorenz from Greater Jamesport Civic Association. I was kind of surprised to hear our Civic Association being brought up today, but I'm here because we're asking not only our Civic Association, but the other civic associations here in the town of Riverhead for a moratorium on development of Sound Avenue, since it's been deemed a scenic and historic thoroughfare. And I received a letter in response to our letter that the board should have from Mr. Murphy, asking us what recommendations we may have for limiting growth on Sound Avenue. And while I haven't had a chance to speak to the other members of the civic associations regarding this issue, from my own personal point of view and that of the Civic Association, Jamesport Civic Association, we're advocating a moratorium. Second of all, earlier today, there were some discussions regarding the noise reduction possibilities at various facilities for wine tasting or beer.
Hold on a minute, hold on.
Sir, could you speak into the microphone? We're not picking you up.
Oh, okay, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
In regard to the noise restrictions that the town has, it's been our understanding that the town requires these events to be over by at least 10 o'clock at night and meet a certain decibel level. The members of my civic association have, over the years, complained that despite the ordinances or restrictions either imposed by the town or by the owners of these facilities, that despite those restrictions, noise continues to go on above the decibel level and also well past any time restrictions. And I think that has to be considered in regard to the application that you've heard today. And I will be speaking with Mr. Murphy regarding the Sound Avenue Historic and Scenic Thoroughfare at a later date. And I can anticipate that the other civic associations in our town will be writing to the town board and to your group as well about this issue. Thank you.
When you're, the town is in the process of a new master plan.
That's correct, and that's why I mentioned to...
Have your associations or any others spoken to the consultants about this?
Oh, we have.
So they're aware of it?
We have mentioned to them a number of times that our concerns are about limiting the use of the growth of businesses, commercial establishments on Sound Avenue. As you probably know, a lot of these comprehensive plan meetings are not presently scheduled in the future. We have a couple of members in our own civic associations who are part of the comprehensive plan committees, and from what I'm told, they have not been advised about any future dates regarding meetings. So as a consequence, we're concerned that the comprehensive plan will result in a lack of participation from the various civic associations, and as a consequence, our concerns won't be considered. So that's why, at least from my point of view, as the president of our civic association, we're advocating a moratorium on any sort of development before that plan is adopted.
You do realize that we don't have the authority to do that? That's a town board issue?
That's a town board issue, but if any restrictions are imposed in the future or allowances, they would have to come through your organization.
So any projects would have to meet those new requirements.
Yeah, and so as a consequence, we don't want anyone to start developing, especially along that route, until the comprehensive plan has been adopted, and that the civic associations, the general public, have some input into making that type of determination. Mr. Murphy, in his letter responding to our correspondence, said that he was looking for recommendations from the civic associations, and I will be conferring with the civic associations here in the town of Riverhead about that. But in the interim, before any development is authorized or goes forward, we're hoping that a moratorium on such development will be imposed.
I don't know of any proposed building on Sound Avenue. Anything other than agriculture. I know Schmitz put up a barn. I don't know of any.
Well, we have the school and we have
Well, those
two
are-
applications today.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
with
those are there.
conversion of an existing building, the only application for quote-unquote new development is for the 6,000 square foot wine tasting room.
Well,
That's basically
the complaint in the
That's
last couple
basically
months in Jamesport is.
tearing down one building and putting up another one. I think it's in the same footprint, so I mean...
A number of, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, sir.
The manor, which is now under new hands, or new,
So I've seen in the paper.
okay.
But have in the past, as I mentioned,
That
and
was
as
a
the
problem for
gentleman,
a couple of months going on there.
you know, I think Mr. Kelly mentioned in
Otherwise,
his FOIL request, seeing about 20 letters from members of our civic association about noise problems in our area. So I know it's a concern not only in Jamesport, Laurel, South Jamesport, Aquabog, but apparently in the community surrounding that facility that you entertained today. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi. Good
Hi, good afternoon.
It's
Can you
5
please-
o'clock, it's almost evening. And congratulations
Thank you very much.
on your appointment.
Thank
Would it be okay if I spoke with this down?
Yes, can you please state your name?
Amanda Graham, Riverhead, New York. You know, I don't know why we were even having the discussion about the Baiting Hollow Vineyard. It's a continued conversation when there was a vote, and it was voted down for noise. So I don't know, did he change his application? Did he?
So the application was not denied. We had a approval, resolution to grant preliminary site plan approval. That resolution failed to get adopted. That does not equate to a denial of an application. It really was kind of in limbo.
What about the aspect of the music aspect? Because even tonight, it's not mentioned music, it's just mentioned the building. So that's why I thought, wow, we conquered that hurdle.
I mean, the board did, I mean, most of the conversation really centered around noise and music at the site. I mean, when we review a site plan, we review all aspects of the site plan, the site operation. But the reason why I was here before the board tonight was really the vote on that prior resolution, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to speak on it, but it was a non-action. It was not an approval, and it was not a denial. The board really, when they're
I
reviewing-
wasn't under that.
the board, when they're reviewing an application, they have to act in the affirmative in one way or the other, which did not happen at that October meeting.
So is he going to then reassess his application and apply again for some kind of music?
No, he would not have to apply again. The board did not act on that. They did not act in the affirmative on that application. So it's not a new application, it's the same application. And the direction from the board was, as I understood it, to reconsider a resolution with some minor modifications regarding sound on the property and music.
Because I'm sure you're aware of, you know, we all hear civic associations and such, we're all here when Cider House opened up, and we had that taken care of. There were plenty of neighbors that came in, and he took the speakers down on the outside, and there is no music there. You go to Roanoke Vineyard, there is absolutely no music there. You go to Palmer, yes, they have a weekend band like this gentleman does for Baiting Hollow. He's on many websites for he's getting ready for his weddings. He's on knot.com and rusticweddings.com and longislandvineyards.com. He's getting ready. And so are we, for the noise. There are how many homes behind him that are going to hear that noise? And the gentleman that did show up, who lived across the street, had more than just stories about noise and other shenanigans that go on his property when the people exit Baiting Hollow Vineyard. And I felt really, really saddened by that man having to come up here and say some of the things that he's witnessed. And I'm sure you remember hearing them. You know, when you live right there, you're affected right there. Just like pumpkin time, you know, or weekends from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So we're affected, and I didn't move here 25 years ago to be affected in that nature. I want my nature to be calm and serene. And you know what? When I was younger and I was more into the vineyards, they weren't this verbose. They weren't this over the top. It was a gentle progression. And the progression is getting to a point now where you got to reel it in and stop it before you have another Vineyard 48 incident. And that's what we're all really concerned about, is one thing begets another thing begets another thing. And it's not a vineyard. I mean, he was selling Christmas trees this winter.
It's an agricultural use.
At a vineyard?
Yes.
At a farm.
Can I ask where you reside? Do you reside near it?
Sure do, Reeves Park.
I'm sorry?
Reeves Park.
Okay, Reeves Park, okay. I mean, I'm fairly close too. I remember the old vineyard. And I can tell you, there was no question in my mind about blaring music. I mean, you know it was horrible back a
Absolutely.
few years.
Absolutely.
Can you say, I mean, this is a question, can you say that now you hear music?
Well, I can say during the wintertime, it has lessened some, but in the summer, absolutely, absolutely.
So you
And
hear,
some of that could possibly be coming from the Cooperage also. They have live outdoor music right
If
on the
anything,
road.
it's LIV, which is next door, and then it's the Cooperage. But when you're on, trying to make that turn on Edwards, and you're getting the traffic out of that vineyard, and, they have it full. They have it full right out to, what is it, Owens Landscaping? They have that whole corner and there are people just pulling off the lawn. And it's,
He
3,
stopped
4,
that
5
quite
o'clock
a
in the
bit.
afternoon.
He's-
Oh, no, it
he
still
has-
goes on.
he stopped that quite a bit by he's moved the parking away from that.
He's even put up fencing, metal fencing, to keep the people out of walking down the lines of the vines. So they're just parking right up there. It's just getting out of control. And if we're any way that we could pull it back and rein it in and keep it at a noise level that the people who are patrons hear it, that'd be fabulous. And as I said last time when I was up here in October, we hear Riverhead Raceway. Great. It's on the weekends. We hear it. Yeah, it's entertainment. We understand that. It's only for that portion of the evening. We get it. And yes, being in Reeves Park, we hear the camp all the time with their, buglers and reveille and, whatever they play on the sound system there. But Cider House had outside, picnic tables and such, and the people across the street complained that they had to listen to the music all the time. So those were taken down. And as I just stated, a couple of other vineyards going down the way.
Yeah, Roanoke is no longer open to the public.
Yes, I know, I was a member for 15 years.
Yes,
But
so-
no music and, no weddings.
That's how they've chose to run their business. They don't have any visitors at all. You either belong to the club or you can't. You don't,
But if you go to Macquarie, he's not jamming out. He's not. And,
that's South Old Town.
well, okay. Try to keep Sound Avenue its agricultural, most beautiful road in the world. That's all I ask.
Well, thank you for coming up tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to the resolutions.
I'll move resolution number 1 of 2022, which is the Riverhead Plaza Restaurant Depot and the type 1 action pursuant to secret and circulate lead agency request.
Second motion.
Motion moved and seconded. Vote.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution approved.
I'll move resolution number 2 for Kentucky Fried Chicken facade improvements. So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
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 I'll move resolution number 3, 48 Third Street Townhomes to assume lead agency status, issue negative declaration, so moved.
Second motion.
Motion moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution number 4, 1530 North Country Road, resolution assume lead agency status as issue a neg deck pursuant to secret for a site plan application.
Second?
Motion moved and seconded. Vote. All
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll move resolution 05, 1792 Middle Country Road.
We already did it.
No, that's right, we already did that one. Yep, sorry. We were out of turn.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on all matters? Anybody in the Zoom?
Anybody out there?
There's nobody out there? Okay.
I'll move the minutes of the January 6, 2022 meeting.
I'll second them.
Okay, moved and seconded. Motion to accept has been accepted. Other business?
No.
Correspondences?
None.
Okay, our next meeting date is Thursday, February 3rd, 2022, remember at 6 o'clock. And can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You too.
Thank you, Andy.